Today I'm going to talk about, like, nostalgia. I went out yesterday with my half-sister and her two kids, and they're relatively young, so, but, like, they're not, like, young enough that, like, they're, like, small children. They're young to me, but, like, the oldest one is, like, 6 years younger than I am, so, like, it's not that much of a difference. We went to HMV, and, like, I'm going around, and, like, the eldest one went to go look at anime, because why not? And the youngest one, he followed me around HMV, and I kept finding all these things that I knew from my childhood, or I knew relatively from when I was growing up, and I'd be like, oh, cool, these are CDs, and, like, oh, these are albums, and, oh, look at this stuff, and he asked me, like, what albums were. But then when I started explaining what they were, he was just like, oh, I know that. And I don't know if he was just asking questions to ask questions, or if he didn't know, and then when I explained it, he would say that he knew. But I ended up finding an old Snoop Dogg album that was there, and it was one of the ones, say, from the 90s. I don't exactly know when it came out. But he was just like, how old is Snoop Dogg anyways? And I'm just like, I don't know. How old is Snoop Dogg? He was like, yeah, my friend said he was like 23 or something. I'm like, hold up. Hold up. Snoop Dogg isn't anywhere near 23. He doesn't look that he's that old, but I looked it up and apparently he's in his 40s. I don't know how accurate that is. But, like, that's 20 years of difference. Like, Snoop Dogg was an artist when I was, like, 4. So for my nephew, who's a lot younger than I am, to be like, oh, Snoop Dogg, he's only in his 20s, and how he didn't know, like, certain things that I was pointing out, like, I was like, oh, Macho Man, he was like, who's Macho Man? And, like, just all of these things that I kept pointing out that he didn't know, or that I had to explain to him, like the Scream movies. Like, I was like, oh, the Scream movies, and then there's like, oh, there's a Scary movie. He picked up a movie and was like, oh, Scary Movie, these names are so uninventive. And I'm like, that's a movie making fun of scary movies. It wasn't that scary at all, it was making fun of them. And just because they didn't know about those kinds of movies, maybe it's because I'm older than they are and they're younger, so they're not exposed to that kind of thing. But it still made me feel relatively old, and I'm not even that old yet. Like, I'm just getting into my 20s, so, like, there's not much, like, one can do. And, like, you just gotta roll with it and be like, oh, I guess I'm getting old now, and just move on with your life. Because there's always gonna be things that are too new for you to understand, or are too old for the younger generation to really know what it is. And, like, any kind of example of that is, like, kids react to it, or, like, teens react to something from, like, the 90s or something, because they're younger than a majority of the people who would know what they are. So them seeing these old things would, like, gives me some kind of nostalgia, because people are just like, oh, what are these? Instead of like, oh, I know what that is. And it's just interesting to think about.